And welcome into another edition of Broadcaster Hour. I'm Roger Hoover alongside Kyle Crooks, and he's in Florida. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. Let's head down the road to Columbia, South Carolina, the Soda City, and welcome in ESPN's Kevin Fitzgerald, who joins us this week. Kevin, how's everything going, man?
Fellas, I'm good. I appreciate the invitation. Pleasure to join you guys.
Well, Kevin, we got two Jersey guys on this podcast. I'm a Pequannock guy, you're a Hillsborough guy. So Central North Jersey representing here on this podcast. For you, when did the passion start for all this? Was this a fairly early thing that you knew you wanted to get into sports broadcasting?
Yeah, I think so. And Roger, sorry we've outnumbered you on your own show. No, but yeah, Kyle.
Hey, we are two Appalachian League guys at least. Kyle's not.
No.
And Kyle, how the tables have turned. But yeah, I would say it's funny you asked that when the interest is born. I think we all look back and we wonder, like, wait a second, how did I kind of develop this? And I was always interested in broadcasting communications. It's funny when you watch sports, you're watching it for the action. But I always remember just being intrigued by the voice, like the voices, like who's calling this game, or the Sports Center, like who's doing the 6 o'clock, who's got the 9 a.m. on a Saturday. That always was interesting to me. And people have asked this, and I truly point back to this. This was the first recollection of me being interested in a call, in a broadcast. I don't know if you guys remember these, but every Super Bowl, I think it was ESPN Classic, would air the kind of condensed NFL films recaps of every Super Bowl. And I remember, you'd watch the Super Bowl is a huge day in our household, like it is for many people. And like I would watch those, I was hooked. Like hours before the game, they'd be running them nonstop. But so you'd hear the radio call matched with the action, matched with the slow-mo and the sound bites from the coaches. And that was where I first have a recollection of saying, what is that? That sounded awesome. That sounded really cool. What is this? Oh, it's the voice of the team, so on and so forth. So from that point on, I always wanted to know, hey, who's calling the game? Who's on the call? What's the broadcast team? The phrases, so on and so forth of so many talented broadcasters. So that's where it kind of derived from, was just the interest in basically knowing, like, who is this? Who is on the call?
So I assume you grew up with the same voices I did, Ian Eagle, Michael Kay, Howie Rose, Gary Cohen. Were those the early influences for you, the guys in that market?
Yeah, you're right on. And Mike Breen as well. Yep. and Marv Albert, like Mike Breen and Walt Clyde Frazier. Like I wanted to know Clyde's phrases for that that night's broadcast. It would always be something different, of course, but those were the kind of the influential voices, I think, for me. And then you start to figure out their backgrounds and how they get to where they are now. What did they do? Where did they go to school? What are the skills that you need? But I contend that a couple of those names that you said are some of the best to ever do it, and they're still doing it right now. Mike Breen's been the voice of the finals, the NBA finals, for a decade and a half. Ian Eagle, you're talking about one of the most authentic, hilarious broadcasters, and someone who's just outstanding at what he does. So they're very talented. And I think when you Kyle, like you and I, when you grow up there, and those are the voices that you're surrounded by, or those are the voices that you hear on a given night. It's pretty neat because they are some of the best to do it, and they still are. So just kind of hearing some of the best to do it on any given night. You could flip on a Knicks game, you could flip on a Nets game, and there they are. And those guys in particular are, I think, I think about the word authentic and genuine, because when you listen to them, they're having fun. And to go back to your point about, were those some of the first to influence you? I think that was when I realized, like, if I want to do this, you kind of want to have some fun, or you want the listener to hear, you having fun. I think more often than not, if a listener or a viewer, kind of sees you having fun, they may also as well. So it's kind of, inform but entertain as well. And a lot of those guys you mentioned, I think, are the best to do it.
So you hear those voices, you watch all those NFL films, but then you take the next step from being a fan of this stuff to starting to get into the industry and get on the mic just for the first time. What were some of your first steps that you took?
I went to school at Syracuse University, and it's, to me, I think it's the best, broadcast school and communication school out there for a lot of reasons. But, I remember when Syracuse was always, I knew the name, you knew the brand. You grew up in New Jersey, you watch Big East basketball, so I always had an interest in the school for a number of reasons. From the broadcasting side, but also just seeing the teams, watching them, year after year. I think that's a place where you understand pretty quickly, hey, this is I can develop here, and I've got a great kind of affection for doing this. This is the right place to be. So I'll never forget my first semester when I was at Syracuse, I actually started. I did not start in the communication school. I was always interested. I didn't have any radio stations or TV stations in my high school, so I always wondered if I'd be good at it. But I kind of said to myself, if I develop an interest, a little bit of a further interest in it, maybe I could transfer in. I started as a sport management major, and the first week I was on campus, I got involved or at least walked over to one of the radio stations and realized quickly, wow, this is great. I want to get involved here. And so shortly after that, I decided, all right, let me transfer into the communication school over at Newhouse. But yeah, it's real. Those first, Roger, to your point there, those first attempts, I would say, behind the mic, because those first, those early tapes, they don't sound particularly great, but it's kind of the reality behind it. That's one of the few careers, I think, or majors or just career paths. When you're in school, it's hands-on. There is a microphone right there. You are on the air, whether it's a student radio station or the TV station, so on and so forth. So, every time, whether it's early on in your career or now, there is that reality to it. You are on the air. That red light is on, and to me, it's invigorating. I think a lot of people would say it's invigorating. So even from the get-go, you're on the air, or the feature that you put together is airing on the broadcast, or the interview that you're doing is going to be on the air. So meaning, it better be quality. So make sure you're taking this serious. Someone could flip on your talk show on the student radio station. You don't get a pass because it's a student station. Make sure it's quality. Make sure whatever you're doing and putting on the air is with the utmost and a lot of effort. So I think that's what kind of developed my immediate interest was just that, Roger. I mean, like you're there, it's real, it's hands-on, you're at the game, you're behind the mic, as opposed to, in the classroom, writing a paper, researching for a paper. All that stuff is important, but I think just the reality of it, when we all dive into this business is, hey, there's the mic, you're on the air, the game is live in front of you, so on and so forth. That's pretty invigorating.
And what can you tell us about really the Syracuse style? It seems like even in the last decade, or going back years before, building up the Sportscaster U brand, when someone graduates from Syracuse, they have a certain look, they have a certain sound, and just they're solid on the mic, whether that's TV or radio. What goes into kind of building a Syracuse Sportscaster in your mind?
Well, it's nice for you to say that, but I think there is a standard. I mean, I really believe that. And it's developed when you are, as I mentioned a second ago, doing the hands-on stuff. When you're at the student radio station, when you're at WAER, WJPZ, there's a couple different student radio stations on campus, plus the television station. There's a newspaper as well. When you do walk into these places, you can't miss the history behind it. You can't miss the folks that have come before you and have basically set the standard for everyone else who wants to do this. And I think everybody takes that seriously. We have fun and everything like that, but when you do kind of see the names and the Mike Tiricos and the Iron Eagles and the Bob Costases, when you see that, I think it kind of brings out it brings out your effort, it brings out your will, because there is a bar that is set, and it's not just that the bar is there. Your fellow classmates, peers, and friends. Everybody, there is a standard that everyone around you makes sure to keep everybody accountable. And that, I think that accountability, what makes this thing go, particularly at Syracuse. It's the opportunities too. There are a lot of great journalism schools and universities where you may not have the chance to call every football game or basketball game. And we're really grateful that was afforded to us at Syracuse. Doesn't matter if it's a road game, doesn't matter if it's a home game, doesn't matter if it's a tournament in Maui. WAER, the student station, I remember my senior year, the basketball team played in Maui, but it was like, hey, that game is on the schedule. Doesn't matter. Travel is going to be pretty pricey for that, but the station had a commitment to making this thing as professional as possible. So it was every game, it was every pregame show, it was every postgame show. That we didn't skip a beat. So I think that just throw that into the equation of the standard and the bar that I was mentioning before. So I think that plays a huge part into it. It's the great opportunities, and it really is thanks to not just the management team over at WAER, but as I mentioned, everybody that comes before us, everybody that passed through the station and accomplished so much in their professional careers. What I was able to do there was thanks in large part to that history, no doubt about it. So you see it, and I think it's like you join the Patriots, you join the Yankees. I bring those examples up because when you step in, there is immediately that feeling of accountability and like, this is the way we do it. Well, what about no, this is the way we do it. And I think to be successful there, you've got to realize that, and you better buy in pretty quickly. And I think a lot of people do. So when you see everybody else around you taking it seriously, I think that that obviously is going to influence how you are approaching this stuff as well.
Now, I assume too, correct me if I'm wrong, at a place like WAER, you're not going to get a ton of on-air reps freshman and maybe sophomore year. For you, there's got to be a little bit of an inherent pressure junior and senior years when you do get that opportunity to be on the mic, where these are the tapes I'm going to send out to employers once I graduate. I got 2 years to sound good enough to get a job when I leave. There's a lot of pressure in those reps, isn't there, those final 2 years?
I think so, and it's how you make sure that comes out all right is the preparations in the years beforehand, because that's the really neat part too. As you build and as you develop and as you grow, like you said, nothing is guaranteed. So you could be the best sounding, 18-year-old in the country, but it's like, hey, this is you've got to prove to us that you can earn your stripes. So I think the pressure maybe is reduced a little bit based on the preparations in the years leading up to that. And there's a cool system at Syracuse too, where there is kind of the main radio station, the main student station. There's another one as well. So I've referenced WAER, which is the iconic station. And of course, every football, basketball, lacrosse game is broadcast there by the students. There's another station that does high school football, women's basketball, and women's lacrosse. So the opportunities have basically doubled. And so early on, maybe as a student, you've got a chance to kind of get your first reps, let's say, on the air over at WJPZ. So there is a professional way, if you will, where it's not. Sometimes it's hey, you gotta get to go in the stands and grab your tape recorder and make a tape, and that's how you get better. But there's kind of another way where you have a second station where the opportunities have doubled to basically get on the air. To your point, Kyle, get that tape, have it looked at. All right, you need to improve ABC. this could have been better. You could have been sharper here, so on and so forth. So when you do, move along and progress, like you said, to your latter years in college, you got a little more confidence. You've got a little more confidence in what you're doing. So I think just the volume of opportunities really helps, because there's a lot of games that are on the air, and obviously you need people to do that. But there is a pretty strict, clearing system. It was kind of called, the process was being cleared to air, and it was, hey, you've got to improve your play-by-play. You've got to do some features. You got to host. You got to produce the broadcast as well. It wasn't just, hey, you go. These people are calling the game. Everybody had a role too, so you had to kind of go through the checklist. You had to produce some games. You had to engineer some games. You got to be behind the board, and that whole well-rounded approach, I think, just when you do get behind the mic and maybe do the thing that is of most importance to you, calling the game. A lot of us love to call the game. You just have an appreciation and understanding about how the whole process works. And I think that really does reduce that pressure a little bit. You just are better prepared, and you have more confidence than you would have early on. And then, though, hey, you've got to nail the call as well. You've got to, I remember Adam Amin said this one time, sooner or later, there's going to be 5 or 10 moments in a game. Football, you better nail it, though. Like, it comes down to that, too. You better do your job when it really matters. So, but all of that prepares you for those moments.
And Kevin, you've had a couple stops in minor league baseball. Roger was in it for a while. I was only in it for a season. Those are grueling summers, spring summers, no doubt about it. For you, but the daily reps of minor league baseball is a special thing. That's one place you go if you really want to develop quicker as a broadcaster. If you are in the minor leagues for a long time, there's a good chance, because of the reps, you're going to be a really good broadcaster. What was that minor league experience like for you?
Yeah, and I've actually never heard anybody describe it this way, but minor league baseball is a grind. Nobody's never used that term before. But in all seriousness, it is true. But it's mass reps, right? It's a lot of games, and you're on the air every night. So, Kyle, yeah, I identified and Roger, I'm sure you would say the same. I kind of identified that as an avenue where, sure, it's, look, say goodbye to your summers. You're not going to be at the beach for 4th of July weekend or whatever, but just being in that system was going to help you grow. I think you've all got to, everybody has to make, in any industry, any job, sometimes you got to make sacrifices to improve, to get better, to basically grow your understanding of whatever your job is. And so I kind of view that as, look, there are going to be long seasons and you're on the air every night. But it's funny, if you want to be a broadcaster for a Major League Baseball team, that's the job. It is every day. But I just liked it because it was the reps. I mean, every night you were on the air, you had a chance to walk away doing something, whether it was improving something or doing something totally new. Some of these broadcasts, we know, I think the parents and our parents were sometimes the only ones tuning in, but I didn't mind that, because sometimes I could identify things and say, you know what, I'm just going to try this tonight. I've never done it before, but you kind of have the low pressure situation, I guess, of doing that. So it's a place to try new things, to do things completely different in your call, in how you're presenting a nugget. Try to, is this stat boring or is it interesting? We'll find out. I'll see how it comes out on the air. And I always viewed that minor league, working for a minor league team as a place to do that. And I think a lot of us, many of us would say that. So, but it's a lot of games, but I think it develops the comfort. I think, again, the more you do something, the more it becomes muscle memory, whether that's using certain phrases, whether that's how you toss to break, how you come back from break, whether it's how you do your post-game show or something like that. Try a joke out or something like that. So I think it's the more you do it, the more it becomes muscle memory. And so that's why I always viewed that as minor league baseball as a place to do that. Plus, hey, look, at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun sometimes. You're the voice of the team. You're with some great guys kind of doing a similar thing, and that is trying to advance their careers. Great coaches, great stories, that stuff you look back fondly on. So I think everybody that's there, coach, a player, and then us sometimes, a broadcaster, you're there for a reason, because it's a place where you can get a lot of reps to try new things. To me, that was always a key. Try new things, see if you liked it or not, see if the audience liked it or not. And that was a place to do that.
And we had a really similar path, Kevin, and you got to be like the lead voice of an Appalachian League team. You get to be an assistant at Fort Wayne, and then you're back as a lead voice in Columbia. I'm sure just the things you picked up in that Fort Wayne season really helped you when you were the lead announcer once again, just kind of realizing, okay, this is how something in a bigger market works, a bigger team works. That had to be a lot of fun for you.
Well, and the people that I learned from as well, that you mentioned that season. I did. I Bluefield, West Virginia. That was my first job out of school, was working for the Bluefield Blue Jays, a rookie or advanced rookie affiliate in the Appalachian League. But then, that following summer, I had a chance to work with one of my he's a great friend and former classmates at Syracuse. His name was John Nolan. And he was he still is. He's the voice of the Fort Wayne Tin Caps. They're a Padres affiliate out in Indiana, but he does everything: media relations, content creation, and to me that was a really valuable summer. I knew John, and we had called games together. We obviously worked together at the student stations at Syracuse, but to then work with someone, in a larger capacity, and learn from someone who, to me, is one of the most versatile and professional broadcasters, just people that I've ever met, really helped me. You learn when you're working with great people, you learn how to better carry. Forget about just broadcasting, but you learn how to better carry yourself. In the office, for example, you learn how to do an interview better. You improve your communication. You improve so many things that I think, in turn, obviously will. It'll help when you get back on the air too later that night. So working with John was extremely valuable, really advantageous. And then that following summer I was able to get this job in Columbia, and kind of be the voice and do the media relations myself. So again, it's just it's growth, and I think we all have to kind of look for those paths and those avenues to grow, however we determine that that may be or may look like.
And of course, there's a lot of attention on you in Columbia because it's a brand new team, so that always gets a lot of attraction and a lot of people listening in. But then you get a player named Tim Tebow, and that brings a lot of listeners to the broadcast as well. Did that help make you better, knowing that these games are being seen by such a wider audience than maybe if it was just the Columbia Fireflies? Now you add in Tim Tebow to the mix.
Yeah, I think, so it's funny. Sometimes we refer to our jobs in minor league baseball as broadcast and media relations manager or director, and there ain't too much media relations, to be quite honest. Sometimes this summer this was the first time I think there was it felt like there were some media relations responsibilities, or at least at a grander scale. To be honest, that Tim being there and basically being thrown, that whole experience, I think it helped. It kind of helped, not just in terms of broadcasting, but it kind of helped me in everything outside of that. Again, communication, setting things up. I mean, we had interview requests, and look, there were certainly those were outlier scenarios. Having somebody like Tim there, so things had to be coordinated. He had interviews he had to get to. There were things that he was doing, whether it was on off days or so on and so forth. So I think I felt like it was helpful for a lot of things outside of broadcasting. Hey, I've got to manage my time a little better. I've got to manage my schedule a little better. There was a lot more on all of our plates. And so sometimes when the pressure is on, or more so than it typically is, again, that's another area where you can grow. Like, that's another opportunity where you do grow. But I'll never, we never saw crowds like that before. And especially when we were on the road, I'll never forget this one. It was one of our first trips when, I think we were going up to Maryland and New Jersey. This league is called the South Atlantic League. There's actually a team in New Jersey, so we're on the way up. Yeah, we're in, who knows, kind of wherever we were. We were in Virginia or something like that. Anonymous city in Virginia, pit stop, grab a bite to eat, that sort of thing. And, you just see Tim Tebow walking down the side of Route 27, whatever the road was, by himself, walking towards an Applebee's. And it's like, what? Like, imagine you're in the car driving by and, like, that looked like, oh, no, it can't be him. So there were so many wild scenarios and pretty neat stories of having, this iconic football player on the baseball field. And he did it. I give him credit. I mean, he was there every day. There was obviously the effort goes without saying, the effort was there. Extra BP. There was a commitment, no doubt about it. And that's Tim. I mean, I think everybody who has covered him knows that the commitment was there. But boy, it was a wild scene. And I think for everybody it was an opportunity where look, there was a lot more on all of our plates than ever before, even compared to the prior season when we opened up a ballpark, because it was constant. It was every day. There were a lot of requests. People wanted Tim. They wanted him to do this. They wanted him to do that. There was a lot of coordination. And so I think everybody had the chance to basically handle a little bit more throughout the front office. And we had some fun too. That was really cool. The park sold out every night. It was electric, no doubt.
You mentioned his work ethic and the amount of interviews that he had to do, which is, I mean, it's like you said, he's an iconic college football player, but he's somebody who's in the media. So when you go to interview him, is he accommodating, or what is he like in that interview setting one-on-one? Because you're with him all the time. I'm sure he gets to know you as well.
Yeah, it was easy. To your point, he had done this. He had many years of seasoning when it came to interview sessions, one-on-one interviews. That it was second nature. It was easy for him, no doubt. So what we would typically do is every time our team played on the road or visited a different team on the road for the first time, we would set up a 10 to 15 minute interview session with the local media, because that is, if you're in local media in Rome, Georgia, or, Lexington, Kentucky, that's a big opportunity to get to cover him, during this first foray into baseball. And so, but it was so easy. I remember one time, I forget where we were, but I go into the locker room or into the clubhouse, wherever we were, because it was getting close to time for this 10-minute media scrub, and I couldn't find him or something like that. I remember getting to him and I was like, hey, it's time. Let's do this now, or something might have changed, because I remember asking him, like, hey, you want to do this right now? And he's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, just let me know. Like it was, it was kind of, again, he had done this for many years. He had faced the masses of media. I remember in Rome, Georgia, this might have been our first road trip. We get to the park, and all of a sudden, we had this time set up to do the media session, and there is like I kid you not, 2 red velvet ropes, a table, a chair set up for him. It was like a whole big ordeal. The media had a section, and we're walking over, and he's like, do I have to sit there? I was like, yeah, this is kind of weird. This is almost overblown. Like, I said, like, stand wherever you want. But it was funny, because it's the cliche of sometimes people rolling out the red carpet. So they were pretty excited when he rolled into. But I'll never forget, the red velvet ropes actually kind of blocked off the table, and he's like, I'm not sitting there. I said, no problem.
So what's interesting about your journey to getting back to your track is making that jump from minor league baseball and doing that grind to getting to a network level. For you, what was it like connecting with people around the area to try and make that jump? Because I'm sure a lot of people would love to do that as well.
Yeah. And my mentors at the time, I'm lucky to call many of these guys friends now. A few of them, were working at ESPN, and so I've been lucky to be with ESPN for 5 years now and doing a lot of college basketball. But a lot of these guys, Jason Benetti, Mike Cousins, supremely talented broadcasters and great people. They were on. They were the ones that I saw. They were on. They had their work with ESPN. They were with the network. So when you just start to pay attention as we mentioned Ian Eagle and Mike Breen, when the people they really respect are I guess at a certain level, you pay attention to it, you see where they are, and sometimes you say like, you know what, I want to strive for that. And so when I left Syracuse, I really didn't have any sort of television tape or really any experience. I got some during my first year out of school, really some kind of all college stuff. When I was up in Burlington, Vermont, I was working for the University of Vermont. But you start to ask some questions. Hey, what do I need to do to potentially do something like that down the road? Hey, who's someone who I could just get a tape looked at by? Because at the end of the day, feedback is really important. And of course, if you're gonna be hired somewhere, you want those people to be familiar with your work if there is a chance to do so. So I remember reaching out to his name's Chris Farrow. Spent many years at ESPN and now works at Ross Mobile Productions. But I remember just sending him some tape, and he was very kind to just get back to me and say, hey, I'll take a look, or hey, thanks for sharing. And we stayed in touch. Very, very. Every once in a while, I might check in, and he was very kind to kind of to basically humor me, I guess, to take a look and to offer feedback, most importantly. And just by staying in touch with someone like Chris, I'll never forget. I get a call out of the blue. It was October of 2015, and so I was about a year and change out of school, and with no advanced notice or any indication that he was going to call, and I pick up the phone and he's saying, all right, hey, I got a couple games for you. Are you available this day, this day, this? I was like, you got to be, of course. But I had no idea it was coming. So just staying in touch with him created the chance for that opportunity. And, I think he respected my work. And so he knows I owe him, because I am forever grateful for him giving me the chance. And then I think it goes back to that point, that piece of advice that Adam Amin shared. So when you get the chance, you got to knock it out of the park. You've got to make sure you deliver, because someone, kind of went out on a limb for you. And so that was how I got the opportunity. And it just came from, look, a lot of this is timing. There are supremely talented people out there. And sometimes it comes down to, did that person just see your email? Did that person get back to you? And so a lot of it is timing. And, it kind of worked out timing-wise with someone like Chris. So that was how I got my foot in the door. And then I've been very fortunate where the work has obviously grown over the years here. But, sometimes it's that sponsor thing. You got to find that, as Doris Burke says, I think it's Mark Jackson who is kind of her hype person. You gotta have someone who is kind of your sponsor or believes in you. And so Chris did, and sometimes it's patience too, because you never know when that's going to happen. And I kind of lucked out early on where Chris took a chance on me, but I think everybody, because I've been there too, where you wonder when is it going to happen, but patience is a big part of it, and the timing is going to come. But sometimes it's on it's not on your time, it's on someone else's time. So, but putting yourself in that position. So I think it's, persistence, it's the patience, and be willing to just keep putting yourself in that position for the potential opportunity. And that's staying in touch with people. That's updating your work. Get to know the person that may hire you. Make it a two-way relationship, as opposed to can you help me? How can I help you? Hey, let's get to know one another. That's really important, because I think that's when relationships are genuine, that benefits everybody.
Yeah, that leads into my next question. I was going to ask you about kind of that relationship building as opposed to networking, and also trying to figure out how to be persistent without being a pest, because that's a tricky road for a lot of broadcasters to go down, trying to see, oh, am I emailing them too much? Is it not enough? Just how did you approach that?
It's all feel, and I want to answer it better. I think it's feel. I mean, you got to feel the kind of the sense of the room, or kind of what, feel the room, if you will. If you feel like you got to know somebody pretty well on a phone call or just in a couple email exchanges, make sure you put that in the back of your mind. I do this more now, but even just like journaling, journal stuff, interactions or things you find out or learn about somebody. Because you're right, I think it behooves all of us to stay in touch with decision makers and hiring managers. And I think if you lean, there's many ways you can go about it. If you kind of lean towards the patient route, play the long game, right? We're all really eager, especially, and I was guilty of it as well. We all are eager when we leave school, for example, or when we get those first jobs to continue to grow and grow fast. Everybody's impatient. We're all impatient. But I think if you can kind of lean a little bit more towards, I want to get to know this person, and kind of read the room, it's all feel when it comes to, should I send this now? Am I pestering this person? I think I truly believe instinctually you'll know, right? Has someone not gotten back to you? Has someone not taken a look at your reel? Now that shouldn't deter you from being politely persistent. I kind of say strategically and politely persistent. You got to have a plan too. It's one thing to be persistent, but make sure, and polite. It's one thing to be persistent and polite, but make sure you got a plan in place as well. And if you believe in that plan of how to grow a relationship, and again, a lot of it is instinct. It's based on just what you think, how you feel. But if you believe in that plan, I think that'll take the edge off a little bit. Meaning, maybe that'll take the edge off of, am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? Is this person interested? Are they not? It's all feel, but have a plan in place. Have the strategies. Don't bug Ian Eagle during the NBA or Mike Breen during the final. You know what I mean? It's like have some strategies involved and kind of figure out when is the right time to reach out to people, when is the right time to follow up. And I think that comes from kind of your own instincts. I think I trust that most people are going to be able to figure out when it's right. And then, remain persistent, and, just you keep trying too. It never let yourself get too down. So it's all a process.
So Pharaoh gives you a few games, and that leads to just more and more work for ESPN and the SEC network. What'd you learn during those days about how to deliver solid television play-by-play and kind of establishing your own style and your own brand of TV play-by-play?
It is a team. I mean, it is all about the team. There's some, excuse me, there's some games that I think back on, and it's funny because you know your work early in your career, and you know your work now, and sometimes, listen, the call is really important, but in that television call, it is about the team. You got to almost have a love of being the good team players. I think that's important. I love my analysts when I know they have great points or insight or things that we discussed leading up to a game. I want to get them. I want to set them up for those opportunities. I think those early years, Roger, to get back to your question, you learn how to work with the team, and I think it's less of a selfish thing and more of it's the first time you may be in that environment, that ecosystem. There's a producer in your ear. You've got to get these notes covered or this stuff in by this date. You got to give somebody a heads up if you want to bring up this point. What does your analyst want to go into? And a lot of the stuff you learn, a lot of the stuff that happens in a game is on the fly too. So by gaining reps, just the natural ability to to be natural, to be conversational. That develops over time. So I think early on, I've kind of got a few, pillars, if you will, of things that I want to do when I'm on the air, and that is no doubt. I want tee up your analyst. I want what they want to have to basically get over the air that game that day. I want that to come to fruition because that person is the expert. I like that. I kind of like being throwing the assist, if you will. That's number one. Number two, it's almost like everything that's, the game in front of us is important. Don't take everything that you have prepared for that game as gospel and this is important. It's got to happen. Go with the flow. Remember to have some fun too. It goes back to something we were discussing a few moments ago. I think be loose, be fluid, have some fun, be entertaining. I remember this goes back to the first talk show I ever hosted as a freshman, sophomore in college. I remember one of my big philosophies was I remember saying this to myself, and I say it to myself now. I want the viewer, the listener, to walk away from our game and say, that was fun. All right, I'm coming back tomorrow or whatever. And so the more you do it and the more the comfort grows, the more you'll do that. You'll let yourself have a little more fun, be entertaining, look for the chances to have some fun because we're there to inform, but then entertain as well. Can't take yourself too seriously or like these stats that I have to get in too seriously. Kind of sometimes let the action come to you. So that's kind of one of my philosophies as well. But it develops as you call more and more games. I think that's true. Be entertaining. Set your analyst up. Be sure to have some fun, and match the energy that's there too. I'll never. Jason Benetti, Kevin Brown, they're some of the best at it, but that was always their feedback. Even when I was a college student was, you can deliver the energy because, it is a game. This is sports. This isn't a, it's not it's obviously a big environment. There's wherever you are, whether it's football or basketball, there is some electricity. There's some weight to it. So bring the energy. That's really important. But I think that ties into when you know, hey, this is let's put on a good show, let's have some fun. I think that energy part comes from that as well. So those are the things I think from game one that you call to where I am now have really, those are the ones where I look back and say I think that's most important.
And you mentioned all the bells and whistles with TV and all the things that you have to get used to, one showing your personality, another having a producer in your ear, a director in your ear, making sure that you're following what is on that program monitor and what they're watching at home. What is the process between you and your producer? How much are you hammering that talkback button? What's that in-game conversation like?
I think it depends. Excuse me. I think it depends because again, when you work with people often enough, or when you get to know somebody, you understand their preferences. Some producers, they love to hear from you. They want, hey, hit me with X, Y, Z. Tell me where you, tell me where you want to go. What player you're about to share a story on. Hey, feel free to hit me and talk back. Others, they can, excuse me, guys, they can follow you. No doubt about it. So you kind of, understand the nuances of each person as you work with him or her more often. But yeah, some want a lot of discussion. Others don't need it as much. But I always, I kind of like to utilize the talkback when we're maybe going to go into a little bit of a heavier story. Something that, I think is wise to give folks a heads up on so everybody is prepared. So again, it goes back to you develop your style when it comes to that. But I kind of like that sometimes, and especially when you get to know somebody, sometimes you're having some fun dialogue too during the game as well, and that loosens everybody up. So, but it's just it's processing a lot, no doubt, because you may be communicating, or your producer may be communicating with you through talkback while your analyst is saying something. So you got to stay calm, obviously, because you're going to have to juggle a couple different things. Words from your producer, what your analyst is saying, also what's just going on the court or the field in front of you. So you have to juggle all of that. And, so that requires a lot of focus. I think the focus is really important when it pertains to that, the various forms of communication that goes on during a television game. But always remaining, staying calm, staying focused, and staying loose. And just know as you're going into it that you're obviously going to have to juggle multiple things at one time. But the more you do it, the more it becomes second nature, the more it just becomes part of the show each day. But I think, again, to your question, Kyle, it kind of depends, person by person, and you get to understand the styles over time.
Kevin, how much has your overall prep process changed? I know the big thing on Twitter is we all like to post a picture of our spotting charts because we have everything under the sun thrown into a legal document. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, hold it up.
We have the same format. We would love to see your prep, Kevin.
Yeah, hold it up to the camera. That'd be great.
So, Roger, you'll appreciate this. I actually looked for an Alabama chart.
Oh, good deal.
There you go. But this is a basketball chart, and I'm sorry to cut you off because I want to hear your question, but here you go. This is my basketball chart. I'll try to. Let me look at one side here, but it's a lot of information. It's it's color coordination, and I think everybody has their own style as to what they do. And first off, this is shout out time because this is one of my best friends and a great play-by-play broadcaster. He's still Andrew Cannell to me. I think he's now AJ because he was working at a radio station. They wanted kind of a cool name, but this is his template, and he knows I owe him because it's excellent and everything's kind of categorized. So, you've got player name, I've got stats. I keep a tally as best as I can of how many points you have, obviously fouls. And one thing that Andrew had in his that I really love is there's kind of a differentiation between, kind of bio notes and then kind of statistical trends or rankings. So it's kind of compartmentalized here, but I do it online, or I do it on my computer. That is an Excel spreadsheet, color coordinated. I like the logo is my favorite part. I love putting the logo in each game, but that's where and Kyle, I want to. Not to cut you off, but what were you going to ask about the chart?
I guess my follow-up to that would be, so you have that on your chart, but say like for a story where you have to have a beginning, middle, and end, and it's not like you can type out a story into a chart. Do you put it in a separate place? Is it just stored in your head? When you have to tell a deep story, how is that structured in your prep, if at all? Maybe it's just in your head.
I wish I pulled one. What I started doing this year, so again, you've got on each side of the manila folder is the actual, this is almost like the nuts and bolts. This is the player, the height and weight, hometown, notes, nuggets, so on and so forth. What I started doing this year was I always, for each game, I have a Word document that I have open, while I'm hustling away on my computer. That's just there with the Excel spreadsheet of the actual chart that has just like a running list of exactly what you said, maybe more deeper stories. To be honest, that's I start my prep there. Like as if I'm looking to kind of get what are the nuts and bolts of this team? What are the first few bullet points of this team? I'll type it there. It's a good way for me to kind of start the muscle memory. And then as the week or as the few days go on, I'll add more and more, and I add more kind of larger stories. So what I started doing was, before the game, basically taking the most important pieces of information that, again, are maybe not specific to one player or to one team, and I would put it on just a separate, legal size sheet, and I would actually tape it on this side of the chart. I started doing that this year, and it was super helpful. Not so much because I found myself, maybe in game flipping and looking for something from time to time that happened, but it just stored the information for me much better than in the past. Because, you know, there's a lot of info, and sometimes it's tiny print, and I think it kind of facilitates the, you know, kind of regurgitating that story or note a little better, and it kind of flows better than trying to find it in the moment when you may not have ample time to do so. So that's where I would kind of put what's at stake. I basically would put a couple bullet points. What has the team done lately? Which way are they trending? What's at stake if this team wins, if this team loses? So I would organize it and basically put it on this side. But before the game, as you're kind of shrinking it down, prioritizing what you want, you're just going through it. So I think the more all this stuff is great, but sometimes, and I'm sure you guys do the same thing, you may reference something that is, you know, size 7 font, 4th line here that you didn't even have to look up because you went through it, because you kind of did your work and you know, during the preparation process, it commit to memory. You can just pull it out. I think that's huge for football as well. I mean, you guys know the football week is a beast. It's a beast. And so the more that there's making this can sink into your brain, if you will, before you go on the air, I think the better you are, as opposed to saying, "Oh, all right, I got everything on this chart. All right, I'll see a tip off," because then you know, wait a second. Where is that note you wanted to get to? Where is that story? What are the details? Heck, I do it in my hotel room often before games. I say kind of sound out a story. If there's something that I know I want to get into, I may sit there and just recite it, see if it came out properly, if I want to adjust the wording of something. I think if you want, you know, if you know you're going to go into something and you want to do it well, then, you know, you probably have to do some of that stuff. You gotta, you know, sound like a crazy person sitting alone at your desk and maybe recite a story and see if it was worded properly, and did you explain it efficiently enough? You know, efficiency is huge. Can I tell this story, you know, with the most information but with the fewest words, sort of thing? So I started doing that. I would put it back here, and it was a huge help, because sometimes maybe in a break you will glance back and you may see something that you haven't brought up yet, and you may do that here as well. You may do that on either, you know, looking up a specific tidbit or a story as well.
You mentioned that so much of the job is just having fun with the games, and I think that goes with everything around the games. And I noticed on one of your latest demo reels, a lot of it was just some of the fun stuff that you and Dane Bradshaw were doing at shoot-around, whether it's wearing, you know, his old Tennessee shorts or, you know, having some fun with Jerry Stackhouse. So what can you tell us about, you know, those kind of opportunities to have fun around the game you're calling, and why is it important for you even to put on your reel?
Well, first off, I'm lucky to work with Dane Bradshaw, to your point there. Former captain at Tennessee. You know, this guy, he was a grinder, great player. And but he is just a natural. He has that sense of humor as well, just naturally. Very funny. You know, I honestly, the games are great, to your point, that going back to having some fun. But I honestly almost cherish the, you know, we'll get into wherever, Tuscaloosa or Baton Rouge the night before a game. We'll go out to eat. You know, that stuff is, I almost cherish that as much as doing the game, because he's just a good person. We get along. So I think a lot of what you just referenced is based on, hey, if you have a great partner who's just a good person, you know, you'll have a little more fun. He comes up with awesome ideas. There's so much that we do, and he's you know, he's creative, thoughtful. So, but you're right. I mean, I like to. I kind of wanted to highlight the fun that we have, you know, on the air. I think it behooves everybody to kind of figure out, hey, what's your style? What makes you stand out? You know, everybody is so many great broadcasters out there, and I think everybody has to determine their own style. So that became a thing for us, and that's, you know, obviously a point of emphasis from ESPN too. I mean, they want you to have some fun. They want you to get creative. And I love that. I really, really appreciate that. I know Dane does as well. So he is the perfect, you know, he is the perfect guy to play off of. Great friend, and just having someone who has that commitment to doing this stuff, Roger, and the natural, the natural humor and just, being a funny person that he is. I think it helps us, and it helps some of these wacky ideas that we come up with. He's willing to do it. So almost, a lot of it just comes down to the person that you're working with. And I've been lucky to work with a great guy and the production team that helps put it all together. But yeah, we did, styling with Jerry Stackhouse. We made him critique his suits and his suit game. He's walking into, he's walking into Humphrey Coliseum with a Tom Ford bag. I mean, he's the only person who's ever doing that. But he's got the style. But there's just interesting people around the league. And I think when you do your homework and you do your research, you come up with these ideas. A lot of it just is you're in the middle of prep, and we're shooting each other random blueprints of ideas during the week, and it just comes from the prep and getting prepared, and you realize, hey, we can do this with this player or with that coach. So it's having a great teammate and having some interesting people to cover that obviously allows for it. So we certainly try to have some fun. That's a goal. Each broadcast we try to do, something fun, something that maybe it's not totally basketball related, but it's, hey, let's get to know this person. I like that, beyond just how many points do they score or how many years have they coached.
Well, we're coming up on what is going to be a strange sports year no matter what happens, and there could be a lot of remote broadcasts done, the old Remmies, something I know you've done before. Kyle and I have had a little bit of experience with it, but just any advice for broadcasters across the country who may be calling some games, but they're going to be from their house or from a studio and calling it off a monitor?
Yeah, I think the best advice may be, come to grips with it, because that's if that's the reality, that's the reality, and so that's how you're going to have to call the game. And it obviously, anybody would rather be there. I think that's why we all have this love for live sports. It's live, it's in front of you, you're there, you got to be there to see it, to report on it. And when you lose that, you lose the intimacy. You kind of lose the authentic quality of being there. But your forecast of perhaps how it has to be done moving forward can totally be done, and it can be done professionally, of course. And so I think it's just, I had this conversation with somebody, and caution I think is really important. And I've on location, I don't like to say things or start to explain things that I'm not sure of. I don't even when I'm live and there and can see my surroundings, I don't like to do, well, we don't know what the injury is, we can't really see. It's almost like, and especially when you're going to be in the studio setting, don't tell on yourself. I mean, don't begin to, if you can't kind of confidently confirm something, there's no reason to basically bring it up. Now, if a player is injured and you're blocked, you've got to say, hey, this player down. But if you're not sure that, it was a leg or an ankle or an arm, there's no reason to speculate whether you're on site or whether you're in a studio. Well, we can't see this, that, and the other. Laying out, waiting, having patience, being cautious. And I think that's of the utmost importance when you're in a studio where, again, you probably won't have the luxury of being able to peek and look at something or check to see what the coach is doing, or did they take that player back to the locker room? So it's almost like, be cautious. When you have that information, the viewer doesn't know what you were thinking of saying, or the viewer or listener doesn't know what you were maybe planning to say. They only know what you do say. So kind of have some security when it comes to that, and just know that you might not be able to be as on top of things as you typically are. Who is that tackler? Again, did the injured player go to the locker room? Things that you may have been able to explain and figure out immediately. It'll be kind of a, hey, let's wait on it before you, because there are so many things you can go into a broadcast. There are many other avenues you can go down, as opposed to the avenue of, I'm not sure about this, but I guess I'll just say, it's almost, I think, just caution is going to be really, really important. And look, I think now more than ever, the viewer and listener, I think, is in on the secret, meaning they know the state of things in our country right now. They know why a broadcast would be set up this way. So, again, I think it's just having security and all that is going to better the way we would call a game when all you have is a screen or a couple screens in front of you.
Final one from me, Kevin, and your SEC slate has grown over the last year, so you've had a chance to see some of these buildings and see some of the environments. Your favorite SEC hoops environment, what do you got? Have you been to games? Have you done a Florida game recently?
So it's funny you say that. There is, and I've seen every team. The one, for whatever reason, the one arena that I have not been in is, I want to call it the O-Dome. What is it now? Exact Tech.
Stephen C. O'Connell Center, Exact Tech at the Exact Tech Arena.
That's actually
Kyle Crook's Court, yeah.
Well, you know what? Me and Billy Donovan, we're the same. So.
Oh my gosh. That's actually the one arena I actually have not been to. So, yeah, I know. I don't know if there's pressure on me here to say Coleman, and I don't want to just jump in. I'm sure a lot of people would jump immediately to Rupp because there's so much history behind it. I really love, and I think this is kind of the way of maybe the future of college basketball and football. I love kind of some of the smaller arena settings, the more intimate arenas around the SEC. You got like Auburn Arena. I think it seats about 8,000-9,000. Every time I'm there, it's just, you can't hear anything. You got the headset on, and you can't hear your partner next to you. That's a great environment. There's a couple others around the league that are like that as well, where you got Ole Miss, you've got the pavilion there, but there is kind of a special quality. There is a little bit of an aura when you do walk into Rupp Arena, at Kentucky. I mean, everything is there because you can't miss it. They scream it at you. Here are all the NBA, the former Wildcats that are now in the NBA. Here are the national championships. You can't avoid it. Their practice facility as well. You can't avoid it, and that's really neat. That's the history. That's hey, we're better than you, and we kind of know it. Sort of like that's the domination of that program over the years, and that's pretty neat. And they do fill up that place regardless of whether it's an exhibition game in October or whether it's Florida in March. They obviously pack it out, and that's just the way of that's the DNA of a Kentucky Wildcats fan. But no, I truly, and this is not to be politically correct, I really I love there are a lot of great arenas, and I appreciate kind of the qualities of all when you are there, kind of bouncing around a league. So I'm going to have to try to make it to, hope, fingers crossed, at some point in the future there will be a Kyle Crook's Court visit at some point down the road.
You'll be seated right in the Rowdy Reptiles, by the way. You have the student section right behind you, so you'll get a nice greeting.
Well, Kevin, we'll get you out on this. Kyle and I started this show pretty much early on in the pandemic, something every Friday to kind of help pass the time and continue learning about the industry. And I know for you, you've also started your own show, a podcast called One-on-One. You've started to visit with some SEC basketball coaches. Just as we head out the door, what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I kind of became like every person on earth has a podcast now. Like my mom, our family dog has a podcast. But so when I was starting, I was like, all right, I want to do this, but I feel like I'm kind of following the trend or something like that. But no, it's been fun. It's been fun. Thanks for bringing it up. So I started this podcast. I called it One-on-One, and to me, it's more of an interview show. Kind of like this. To me, I don't think nobody really needs or cares about my opinions or whatever. But I know that there are really, and I know them because I've been able to meet them and forge some great relationships with insightful, just impactful coaches, administrators, bright players, in the college hoops world, the college football world, so on and so forth. And kind of like what you determined there, Roger, I said, I think this would be neat to maybe basically shine a light on this, I think people who listen to this will appreciate it, will appreciate the philosophies or the stories or the backgrounds, kind of the in-depth, nitty gritty about whoever it is. Frank Martin, South Carolina's head basketball coach. Mason Jones, the SEC, one of the SEC or co-SEC player of the year this past year at Arkansas. Because I know these guys, I know their stories, and sometimes when you're calling a game, you don't have the full chance to really share or dive deep into someone's background. And I said, this could be an avenue to do so. So, yeah, I'm with you. I started it because, we're getting to this point. I think I looked at my watch and was like, you know what, we got a long way to go here. So might as well have some fun. But it is fun, and some of these guys, they're really gracious to take the time out and do it. So yeah, One-on-One is the name of the pot. We had Konzo Martin on, was the latest guest. I want to talk about just insightful and what a leader he is. He's Missouri's head men's basketball coach. So it's been fun, and it's been neat to just dive in a little deeper with some of these guys that, we share their story when we're on the air, but sometimes you don't have the full capacity, like 30 minutes on a podcast, to dive into some really, really impactful stuff that they do or that they've been through, in their careers, in their lives.
Well, we look forward to listening to that more, and get ready to laugh whenever it's Rick Barnes, because that will be unforgettable radio coming up when you do have Barnes Unfiltered.
I got him on deck. I got him on the short list of future episodes here. This is good. I will be placing the call sooner rather than later then.
Oh, it'll be entertaining. Just like this past hour has been, Kevin, you gave us exactly what we wanted to hear. A lot of great philosophy, and also really detailing your journey well. You're one of the best up-and-comers in this business, so we really thank you for spending some time with us today.
Well, you're really kind to say that, and thank you guys for the invitation. This was a lot of fun.
All right. That has been Kevin Fitzgerald. For Kyle Crooks, I'm Roger Hoover. Thanks again for watching this week's edition of Broadcaster Hour.